It's Ash from Super Videos back for another Q&A video. This is going to be Q&A number 44. As always, if you're not caught up with The Walking Dead's TV show and comic book and Fear the Walking Dead, you may not want to watch this video because it may spoil some things for you. So that being said, let's get right into this. The first question comes from Nick Martini and he asks, why isn't The Walking Dead's budget higher? I read that it was 3 million as of right now per episode, and I feel it should at least be 5 million, being that Game of Thrones is 10 million. What are your thoughts? So I definitely agree with you. I think when they say that it's the top rated TV show in history, or arguably the top rated show in history, then they have some sort of expectation. You know, the bars are raised. They have to have some sort of budget to be able to give us top quality stuff. Maybe not every episode, but at least something reasonable for one season. So I definitely agree with you that the budget needs to be higher. I don't even think it's 3 million. I think that's a bit too high. I might be wrong, but if you read that somewhere and if it's reliable, then it's probably true. But I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree with you that they need to have better budgets, especially for the next season, which is all out war. They definitely need the budget. That's a great question. The next question comes from Chan the Man. You ask, who do you think will kill Daryl if he dies in the war? That's a great question. I think there are probably 2 people right now that can potentially kill Daryl, and it's gonna be good for his character and it's gonna make sense. It's either Negan or Simon. It has to be a big character. So either Negan or Simon. Now I think it's better for it to be Negan because Negan and Daryl already have that sort of thing. So if it gets to a point where Negan has to kill Daryl or sees no other choice, it's going to be very interesting. And I think that will be more interesting and it'll add more to the story that way. And I think it'll be even more interesting and shocking if Daryl is killed trying to save Maggie. Obviously, he feels that is his responsibility now because of Glenn, and that's going to make it very interesting if something like that happens. That's a great question. The next question comes from Gaming Dude. You ask, what if Glenn and Abraham were in the war? That's a great question. I actually did a couple videos talking about this a couple months ago, but at least for Abraham, I think things would have been very much on Rick's side because Abraham was a soldier, he was in the military, so he probably had some knowledge about this sort of stuff, attacking strategically, things like that. So he would have definitely been an important asset to the group in the war. In terms of Glenn, I think Glenn was a great soldier as well. He was one of those where he didn't like to kill, but he did when it was necessary. And he was a few of the characters left that still had his humanity left. So I think Glenn being alive, not just in the war, but long term, would have helped Rick stay sane, I guess you can say. But in terms of the war itself, I think he would have just been a great soldier. And obviously, he would have been there for Maggie and the baby. Next question comes from Royals King 35 Royal. You ask, since Heath probably won't return, could Scott or Aaron take his leg, get blown off story arc? So that's a great idea, but I feel like if Heath didn't take that, they are probably going to give that to Tara because Tara is somewhat of a big character, or as big of a character as Heath was in the comic book at that time. So I feel like it kind of makes sense that way. But I said in my death prediction that I think Tara is going to die. So if they are in fact going to kill Tara in the war, then I think that they need to give that to someone else, because if she's gonna get her leg blown off, then she can't die. They're gonna have to give it to someone else. Maybe, like you said, Scott or someone else. I think Tobin would be another good alternative. Great question. The next question comes from Final Mystery T. You have 2 questions. The first one, if you were Rick, what strategy would you use to win the war? That's a great question. I think what they have to their advantage at the moment is Dwight being on the inside and also potentially Eugene being on the inside and helping them. So that's one point that they can definitely use to their advantage. Next question you have is, why don't Negan capture Jadis and just take over like the rest of the groups he has done? I don't think Negan has known about Jadis so far. I think Jadis and Negan came into contact, or at least the Scavengers and the Saviors came into contact just in the last couple episodes, maybe even just the last episode, season 7's finale. So I think that Negan just didn't know about them. If he had known about them earlier, that's probably what he would have done. But at this point, I think because of the thing with Rick and everything, he just couldn't handle trying to get Jadis and the Scavengers in line. So he probably was gonna leave that till later on, and in a way get Jadis to help first and then do it. That's a great question. The next question comes from TWD Dude, and they ask, do you think Negan will die at the end of All Out War or survive? I definitely think he's gonna survive. I think they're gonna go with the story that was in the comics, and he's going to survive All Out War. Next question comes from Gaming Dude. You ask, who will Rick's next girlfriend be? I don't think Rick is going to have a next girlfriend. Obviously, we're talking about the comics here. I don't think he's going to have a next girlfriend. I think after Andrea's death, Rick is not going to even think about a partner for a long time, because he was obviously very, very close to Andrea. Even more close than he was with Lori. So it's a big loss for him. So I don't think that he's gonna move on that quickly. For Jesse, it was very different. For Jesse, he didn't really love her or anything like that. It was more about just meeting someone new. But for Andrea, I feel like it's definitely the case that Rick was in fact in love with her. And so it's gonna be very difficult for him to move on. Next question you have is, did Gabriel die in All Out War in the comics? No, he did not. He died in another kind of story arc, big story arc that happened after All Out War, even after another story arc after All Out War. So it was a long time after All Out War happened when Gabriel actually died. Next question comes from Jig Almandros the Goose. You have two questions. The first one, do you think that the Oceanside should join All Out War this season 8? Yeah, I definitely think that everything is set up for them to come back into play and help in the war. So definitely. Next question you have is, do you think Negan will find out about Eugene's pill? That's a great question. I think he might, but it will probably happen after the war. He's already got enough things to deal with. So finding out about the pill and Eugene and Sasha is probably not top priority for him. The next question comes from the one and only bad guy. You ask, we need another badass in The Walking Dead like Abraham. Who do you think will be the next badass to come on The Walking Dead? I hope Jerry becomes a badass. I definitely agree with you. Jerry has the potential to become a badass, but I think Jesus, he's definitely another character that has the potential to take Abraham's place in terms of being a badass. Daryl is already a badass, Rick is a badass, Michonne is a badass, so we already have a lot of badass characters, but in terms of new characters, I pretty much think you're on point with Jerry, but I would add Jesus in there as well. Next question comes from the Gaming Wolf. You ask, do you think Sherry's death will change Dwight and Rick's friendship forever, even if Dwight sticks with Rick and doesn't betray? I don't think so. I think it might be a short-term thing where there might be some animosity between them, but I don't think it'll be a long-time thing. I don't think that it'll ruin their loyalty. I don't think that they're necessarily friends right now, but it wouldn't ruin their loyalty. If Abe survived Negan, could he take Nicholas's comic death? It's difficult to say, but Abe could have been a potential candidate for that. The last question comes from Nick Martini. You ask, will the show be able to pull off a new beginning with the budget? I think the budget is not so much of a problem during A New Beginning as it is during All Out War. So yeah, I think they could definitely pull it off with the budget they have, but All Out War, that's a different story. I think they need more budget for the war to make it look right and for it to be something that fans are gonna like. That's it for this Q&A video. Thank you for participating. If you want to participate in my next Q&A video, write your questions in the comment section below. I'll be back for another video.